how would you describe yourself?
I'm the normal one.
Absolutely incredible!
Adrian!
I'm a totally normal guy. I came from Black Forest.
Jürgen Klopp truly believes that, but the numbers? They tell a different story. A normal guy accepts probability. He doesn't break it. A normal guy doesn't take over a club in 13th or 8th place and lead it to the top of the world. A normal guy doesn't go to war against financial empires with a pocket knife and come back as a winner. Forget the smile, forget the one-liners. If you strip away the hype and let only the facts speak, the regular guy disappears. Then you see something that statistically shouldn't even exist. An anomaly. A glitch in the matrix of modern football. And today we prove why. We like to forget where this journey actually began. We think of Dortmund or Liverpool, we see the Champions League finals, confetti and trophies. But to understand what Klopp really did, we have to go back to the time when he had just become head coach at Dortmund. The Bundesliga is not a league, it's a monarchy. FC Bayern Munich sits alone on the throne. Squad value almost 250 million euros. Behind them, Werder Bremen, Schalke and Hamburg. Those were the giants. And Dortmund? Dortmund was irrelevant. Look at the data. 8th place in the money ranking. Total market value 79.8 million euros. Let that number sit on your tongue for a moment. The entire Dortmund squad back then was worth less than Harry Kane alone costs today. In the table, 13th place. The club was almost bankrupt, the team insecure. The stadium half empty, drained by disappointment. This was not a sleeping giant. This was a patient in intensive care. But this was no isolated case. It was only the beginning of a pattern, because when Klopp took on his last major coaching job, he didn't find paradise. He found exactly the same field of ruins again. It was almost as if someone had pressed the replay button. Fast forward 7 years. 2015. Liverpool. Different place, same disaster. The Reds were in freefall. Brendan Rodgers was gone. The squad, on paper, worth 324 million euros. Sounds like a lot? Compared to Manchester City's almost 500 million, that was pocket change. Klopp didn't take over a title contender, he took over a team, according to every statistical model, was destined to finish in the dull middle of the table. That is the starting point. 2 clubs on the ground, financially left behind, sporting-wise, worthless. No one, absolutely no one, looked at these numbers and thought of dynasty. Then Klopp arrives. He doesn't bring money, he doesn't bring world stars, he brings just one single sentence.
We have to change from doubter to believer.
From doubters to believers. That sounds romantic. That sounds doable, but when Klopp said this, he had overlooked one variable in the equation. He hadn't realized that he wasn't just switching to a new league, he had landed right in the middle of a historic arms race. While he was trying to fix Liverpool, his neighbors were building financial empires. But that was nothing new for Jürgen Klopp. He knew what it felt like to fight giants. He came from the Bundesliga, which really wasn't a league anymore, but a monarchy. During his time at Dortmund, there was one club that dominated the league. Look at what FC Bayern Munich did to the Bundesliga during this period. This is not competition, this is a massacre. In 7 years, Bayern played against the rest of the league. The result? 165 wins. And losses? In 7 years, they only lost 33 times. Their goal difference? Plus 379. They didn't dominate the league, they suffocated it. Anyone who faced this Bayern side had statistically already lost in the players' tunnel. That was the level of impossibility Klopp started with. And then he goes to England. And instead of getting easier, it gets even more brutal. Liverpool started with a massive financial disadvantage. This was no longer old school English football, this was a historic arms race. Let's look at the new rivals. During the time Klopp stood at the touchline, Manchester United threw 1.1 billion euros into the furnace, Chelsea 1 billion euros. These are numbers so big they almost lose their meaning. But then there's this final boss, Manchester City. Almost 940 million euros in losses. But it's not this sum that makes these opponents so frightening, it's how they use their money. These clubs play Monopoly with unlimited credit. If City buys a defender for 50 million and he flops, they just buy a new one tomorrow. Their squad is so deep that every absence can be replaced immediately by an equally good player. Economic or sporting risks practically no longer exist for them. And Klopp? In this Shark Tank, Liverpool's net deficit was 426 million. Less than half of City, less than a third of United. Klopp had to compete against financially far superior squads while painstakingly developing his own team. This was not a fair duel. Guardiola, Mourinho, Ten Hag, they all had a safety net of billions. They could afford mistakes. Klopp's margin of error? Non-existent. One single expensive flop would have ended the project. He stood in front of a wall of money and dominance designed so that you cannot win. So, what do you do when you can't win this arms race? When your opponent fixes mistakes with a credit card while one mistake costs you your head? Very simple. You change the battlefield. If you can't buy success, you have to learn how to steal it. Exactly in the moments when other teams give up. We talk about mentality, but most of the time that's just an empty buzzword. With Klopp, however, mentality is a mathematical constant, and here's the proof. To understand how Klopp hacked the system, we need to look at the evolution. Look at the column on the far right. That was Dortmund before he arrived. A normal club. When they were trailing, they averaged 0.62 points. That's standard. That's the statistical law. If you're behind, you usually lose. The team breaks. Then Klopp takes over, and suddenly something happens in people's heads. Against the same opponents in the same league, the number jumps to 0.83. That sounds like a small jump, but it was a decisive test. He taught Dortmund that a 0.1 deficit is not a death sentence. It was the prototype. He proved that you can train willpower like a muscle. And then he took that trained muscle with him to Liverpool, into the toughest league in the world, and he perfected it. Look at this number, it's absurd. 1.29 points per game. After they were already on the ground. In total numbers, 157 points after trailing. Let that sink in for a moment. When Klopp's Liverpool are losing, they statistically still collect more points than an average team collects when a match starts at 0-0. That is the answer to the billions. Guardiola and Ten Hag by perfection, they want to prevent things from going wrong. Klopp knew he couldn't pay for that, so he built a team that specializes in things going wrong. A team that only starts breathing when the plan has failed. He didn't beat money by spending more. He beat it by using the only currency you can't buy, the refusal to die. And he knew exactly that this works, because he had already tested this weapon once against the biggest opponent of his career. Do you remember the numbers from earlier? 165 wins for Bayern, only 33 losses in 7 years. A goal difference of plus 379. That was the reality of the Bundesliga, a single slaughter. But now look at this. In the exact same period in which Bayern pulverized every other opponent, the record against Klopp's Dortmund looks like this. 10 wins for Bayern, 8 wins for Dortmund, goal difference 33-31. Do you see that? This is not a massacre. This is an open exchange of blows. Statistically, it was almost a coin flip. While the rest of the league froze in awe, Klopp played almost on equal terms. He was the system error. He backed this resistance with facts. 2 league titles in a row and the DFB Cup went to Dortmund. He was the only one who didn't just question the monarchy, but actively fought it. And exactly this ability to face giants on equal footing, despite financial inferiority, he took with him to England, because there waited the ultimate final boss, Pep Guardiola. And this is where it gets wild. Because when you look at the data, these two men are playing 2 completely different games. Look at where they start. Pep takes over a machine at Manchester City. Inflation adjusted, the squad was worth almost 1 billion euros when he arrived. At Bayern, same picture. He starts at almost 1 billion. Pep gets the keys to a Ferrari and his job is to make it even faster. And he does that brilliantly. But Klopp doesn't get a Ferrari. He gets a used car and a wrench. At Dortmund, he takes over a squad worth 112 million. When he leaves, 352 million, an increase of 313%. At Liverpool, he takes over 579 million and pushes it to 950 million. Pep manages wealth, Klopp creates it, but money doesn't score goals, right? So let's go on to the pitch. I love this diagram, honestly. I'd hang it on my wall as a poster. But you have to look very closely or you'll misunderstand it. Do you know what we are really seeing here? This is not a chart about coaching success, this is a chart about Pep Guardiola's pain. The x-axis shows how often a coach has faced Pep. The further right, the more often they've battled. But the y-axis, that's the key. It shows Pep Guardiola's points per game in those duels. Meaning the higher the point, the more dominant Pep was. The lower the point, the more he suffered. See this huge cluster of points at the top left? That's Pep's breakfast. Those are all coaches he just steamrolled. Marco Silva, Eddie Howe. Against them, Pep gets almost 3 points per game. Those are routine wins for City. Now look over at Jose Mourinho. Mourinho played often, but the points are still relatively high, around 1.7. Pep beat him, he figured him out. But then, look all the way down to the bottom right. There is a single point, all alone. In its own galaxy. Jürgen Klopp. Over 30 duels, maximum experience, but look at the height. The value is a meager 1.34 points for Pep. Do you understand what that means? Every time Pep Guardiola had to play against Klopp, his perfect City machine turned into an average team. Klopp almost halved Pep's point average. He dragged him down to the level of a relegation candidate. And exactly this little point down here on the right is the reason why there are trophies in Liverpool's cabinet today. Without this statistical outlier, City would have won everything. But because Klopp was the only one who could push Pep down this far, Liverpool were able to win the Champions League. That's why they could win the Premier League and the 30-year drought. This graph proves Klopp wasn't just a rival, he was the kryptonite for the best coach in the world. But there's one last thing, a statistic you won't find in any official match report, because I made it up myself. But it shows the truth better than any table. We ask a simple question: what does success actually cost? What if we take net spending and divide it by the points won? How many euros did these clubs have to put on the table for every single point? First, look at the graphic. The x-axis is performance, points per game. The further right, the better. The y-axis is money. The lower, the less loss you made. See Liverpool? They are at the bottom right. Almost the same horizontal line as Manchester City, so almost the same sporting performance, but vertically, worlds apart. Liverpool float far above the other top clubs. Now let's look at the price tag. Manchester United burned over $1 billion. Broken down, they paid 1,781,333 euros for every single point. Chelsea, 1.7 million per point. Even Manchester City, the absolute machine, paid around 1.2 million euros per point. That's the market price. That's what it costs today to play at the top. And then there's Jürgen Klopp. 594,630 euros. He doesn't even pay half of City. He plays a third of United. This man walks into the most expensive store in the world, buys exactly the same product as the sheikhs and oligarchs, but at the checkout he only pays 30% of the price. That's not Moneyball magic. That's the ultimate proof that he didn't buy success, he earned it. When legends leave, they often leave scorched earth behind. We saw it at Manchester United after Ferguson. The club falls into a hole because the entire system depended on one person. But Klopp works differently. Look again at the table market values. He leaves Liverpool with a squad of 950 million euros. He didn't just increase the club's value during this time, he cemented it there. Same in Dortmund. He took over at 79 million and left at 352 million. He doesn't leave ruins. He leaves foundations that clubs can stand on years later. Let's first look at Dortmund. Before him, the club was a patient in intensive care. The data shows it. Before Klopp, Dortmund's average league position was 8.4. That's dull mediocrity. Klopp didn't just make them champions, he permanently changed Dortmund's look at the years after his departure. The average ranking permanently improved to 2.6. Dortmund didn't fall back to mediocrity. They remained the clear number 2 in Germany. He gave them back the self-image of a top club, and it still holds today. Then Liverpool. He took over a sleeping giant that before his arrival averaged 5.8 in the table. But he doesn't leave a ruin that needs rebuilding. He leaves an empire, a squad value of almost 1 billion euros. The next coach doesn't inherit a renovation project, he inherits a Ferrari. And the proof? Look at what happened almost immediately after he left. His successor Arne Slot comes in the stands in first place in his very first season. That normally doesn't happen when a legend leaves. Usually chaos breaks out. But Klopp left the club so healthy that the machine just keeps running. He didn't make himself irreplaceable. He made success inevitable. But to understand his true genius, we can't look at Liverpool's billions or Dortmund's titles. We have to go back all the way to the boring numbers of Mainz. At first glance you see nothing. Absolutely nothing. Look at the averages at the bottom. The average league position before Klopp, 8.2, during Klopp's era, 8.4, And after Klopp, 8.4. Someone would say he changed nothing, the line is flat. But this is the moment where data without context lies. What this table doesn't show, the 8.2 before Klopp was in the second Bundesliga. Mainz were nobodies in the second tier. The 8.4 after Klopp, that's the first Bundesliga. He didn't change the number, he changed the meaning. He took a mid-table second division club and transformed it so radically that today, decades later, it stands as a stable first division club at exactly the same table position, but one league higher. The fact that Mainz today are completely normal part of the Bundesliga, that we see them every weekend, that is the anomaly. Because he showed you don't need the most money if you're willing to suffer more than your opponent. Many coaches win trophies, but Klopp did something rare. He didn't just coach club, he repaired them. He made them sustainably successful. He didn't change the game, he fixed it. What do you think? Should Jürgen Klopp become the national team coach one day? Write me your opinion in the comments. If you liked the video, feel free to leave a like. And if you want to see more videos like this, make sure to subscribe to my channel. Ciao and see you next time.